So welcome everyone again. My name is Charles Rader. I'm the managing partner here at AmLaw Group. We're a global mobility immigration law firm based just outside of Miami, Florida. Historically, we've focused primarily on immigration to the US, working with entrepreneurs, high net worth investors, highly skilled and professional individuals secure short-term or long-term residency here in the US. But over the last 3-4 years, we've been working increasingly with American clients in securing secondary residency or citizenship abroad. And so today we're going to be talking about that. I will share my screen with a brief presentation just to give some visuals to the words that I'll be sharing with you and thoughts over the next 30 minutes or so. And today we just wanted to kind of go over an overview of what are some of the best or top residency and citizenship options for Americans in 2025. I'll admit this presentation, this discussion is going to have more of a European tilt, but we certainly don't work exclusively with Europe. Caribbean is also an increasingly popular route or avenue for Americans. I mean, if you look at the statistics overall, far and wide, Mexico is the largest overseas jurisdiction for Americans to acquire second residency. Not so many Americans getting citizenship in Mexico per se, but definitely in terms of residency, Mexico is far and away the #1 player among Americans. But that's changing, and it also depends a lot on the particular person and his or her family situation and their plans. Mexico obviously is most popular just because of the weather, low cost of living, and proximity to the US. But increasingly, we're working more and more with clients who don't necessarily have only those priorities. They're not looking just for a place to relax on the beach necessarily 365 days a year. Maybe they're looking for a little bit higher lifestyle or higher standard of living, access to Europe, whatnot. And so increasingly, I would say the locations of highest interest, with our US clients are increasingly Europe. So today we'll go through focusing on Europe, what is currently happening in these jurisdictions that would be of interest to you or of relevance. And we'll certainly keep time for Q&A at the end. And certainly, if after the conversation today, after the presentation later on, you'd like to reach out to us for a more individualized discussion about your plans and what options we could help develop for you, we would be more than happy to do so. So here's one thought or one just caveat before we start the discussion is today's discussion, we're going to focus, as I said earlier, more on the European countries, and in particular, we're probably going to focus a little bit more on golden visas. And I don't have a slide here. I mean, this slide just mentions, why Americans are relocating. Everybody's got their plan. Could be some of the political partisanship in the U.S., cost of healthcare and education, or just looking for a long-term backup plan or a plan B, and they're calling them that. That's even a pretty regular, commonly used phrase, plan Bers, right? They're not necessarily looking to leave the US right now, but they want to set things up for themselves, possibly their children in the future, either near future, a couple years from now, or maybe farther out, 5 years from now, where they could take advantage of this residency or citizenship that they have if and when they need it. So in that situation, that's what we're probably going to talk about more today, is arrangements for these so-called plan Bers. So what do I mean by that again? So plan B, how it's generally kind of used in the industry, means, as I mentioned, you're not looking to relocate right now. It's a plan B. It's break in the case of emergency, break the glass here, like an emergency exit if and when things get to that point. So that lends itself for a golden visa offering. So today, in today's discussion, we're not going to talk so much about some of the other visa offerings that exist, which are more prevalent and more popular for people who are looking to make a relocation in the immediate future. I would say one of the most prevalent one for those is like digital nomads. And those are very common in Portugal, Spain, Italy. I think France has a similar program where basically you're allowed to go over to these countries, live there full time, and work provided that you can show that you have some offshore job, say in the US, North America, somewhere, that is allowing you to earn a minimum income level. And so you're not taking local jobs away, but you also have the advantage of living there. We do have quite a lot of clients like that, or people that are looking at retirement options where you're looking to retire, leave the US, and relocate to some other location. There's quite a few of those options in Europe as well. We're not going to focus on those necessarily today, but again, focus on the Plan B options, meaning the golden visas, which again, just for those who aren't clear, means you acquire the residency and ultimately citizenship, but you're not residing physically in these locations. And that's the biggest difference. So if you said, hey, Charles, I want to, move to Portugal. I have a remote job. I can work there remotely. Can we do a digital nomad? Sure, no problem. But you have to understand, you're going to need to spend the majority of your time, at least 183 days a year, in the country, in Portugal, in order to abide by the requirements of that visa. And that's where the big difference is with the golden visa. And as we talk a little bit here, a little bit later, the golden visas are unique, and that's kind of why they're called golden, is that you get all the advantages of residency and citizenship without having to even be there. So we'll step into that a little bit. And here's one thing I wanted to talk about before we even dive into that. People often have a lot of questions about this. What is the difference? Again, this is in the context of the EU, although it generally applies to other jurisdictions, but the EU is unique in that you've got, gosh, I don't know how many countries are in the EU, maybe 20 some odd countries that are geographically close to each other, separate legal entities, separate countries upon themselves, but of course joined by the EU, the Schengen visa regime, and all these other things. But there is a difference. There is a difference, even if you get residency in Spain through a digital nomad, or you get a golden visa in Greece or a golden visa in Portugal. Having just the residency and the citizenship, there is a distinct difference. So what is that difference? This is kind of just a very brief summation of it. But if you have residency, say through a golden visa program, and we'll get into those in a minute here. Let's say you acquired residency through the golden visa in Portugal. You're acquiring, the right to stay, work, live only in that country. You can travel easily to the other EU countries as a Portuguese resident. You're not limited by the limitations that are placed on Americans. If you have, we can go up to 90 days in the EU, then we have to leave. You're not subject to those limitations, but otherwise, you're just like anybody else if you are just a resident of Portugal. So if you wanted to say, hey, I want to move to Spain, and I got a job offer there, you're going to have to go through the same rigmarole than if somebody such as myself here in the US with just a US passport. The fact that you have that Portuguese residency does not help you in terms of getting employment in another EU country. It doesn't help you avail yourself of the medical system in that other country. It doesn't allow you for your children to avail themselves of the educational opportunities. So again, let me see if here, this is where we get a breakdown of the difference between, what citizenship offers. If and when you get citizenship, let's say in Portugal, based on the golden visa. So with the golden visa, there's always a residency period. And after that residency period, you're eligible for citizenship. In Portugal, it's 5 years. And clients are always asking me, okay, well, after 5 years, is it worth actually filing, for the passport? And again, it really depends on what your goals are. But if you're looking to have full mobility throughout the EU and live and reside and possibly work in any other country in the EU, yes, you would need citizenship, Portuguese citizenship in this scenario. If you would like your children to study in university or something like that in any of the other EU countries, yes, you would want the Portuguese citizenship, because that would allow your children, even if they're Portuguese citizens, to study like a local citizen in Germany, Netherlands, Spain, or any other EU country. And if, let's say, for example, you got Portuguese citizenship, but you're like, the water's pretty cold here. I tend to, I prefer Italian cuisine and the Mediterranean more. And you say, hey, I want to reside full-time in Italy. If you have citizenship, again, you can reside, just move, pick up your things and move to Italy without really any kind of, it's like moving to another state, more or less. If you have European citizenship, if you only have the residency in, say, Portugal or Greece or something, and you say, hey, I want to retire in Italy, there's a lot of hoops you've got to jump through. You basically have to start from scratch if you want to make that transition to Italy. So there are a substantial number of differences. And so again, here this talks about differences with public services, with education, the differences between having residency and citizenship. So in the big picture, I think citizenship is generally worth it if you're starting down this path, whether it's in Greece, Portugal, another jurisdiction. But again, it really depends on each individual family and their jobs or their goals. So with Malta, let's jump into some of the meat. What's going on right now in Europe? What options are available? What aren't available? And what are our recommendations? So let me try to here. I should have done this earlier. I'm sorry, everybody. So the Maltese program was closed in April of this year by a decision of the European Court of Justice. In the big picture, it's not going to affect a whole lot of people, and I suspect not many people, even in this webinar, were looking at Malta. Why? Because it's extremely expensive, or it was extremely expensive, right? I mean, after you had all the fees and the actual cost of the program and everything, you were looking at certainly probably 900,000 euros or more. Now, what was its appeal? Well, it was fast. You could get citizenship in probably about 18 months. So I would say it was definitely for more the jet setter, uber rich, maybe, Silicon Valley, types, Zuckerberg types that wanted a citizenship and they didn't want to wait 5-6 years. They wanted it fast and they could get it fast. The closure of the Maltese program was premised primarily on the fact that the ECJ, the European Court of Justice, felt that there was no residency requirement in Malta and that you were basically selling passports. And that really rubbed the EU the wrong way. And ironically, the how would you call it? The Attorney General, basically the equivalent. So there's a legal office that advises the EU on this type of litigation. And that office, even the top attorneys, found no problems with the Maltese program. And so they basically recommended the court, no, you should just allow it in its place because this is all within the power of Malta to decide how it wants to award citizenship. And everybody was very surprised when this decision came through, where they overturned or outlawed the program. And Malta said, generously on its part, that they're not going to appeal it, they'll abide by it. But we're quite certain that we'll see a Malta 3.0. This program is actually the second Maltese program. So they've already done this once before, and they'll probably do it again. So they're just going to revise the program most likely to make it more amenable to the requirements of the EU. What does that mean for all of you listening on this program? There's really only two options, and that's what's indicated here, left in Europe. Only two golden visa options, Greece and Portugal. With the closure of the Maltese program, you'll probably see an uptick in interest in Portugal and Greece. Again, the Maltese program was really for the uber rich, high net worth, ultra high net worth maybe. And there was a very strict quota on the Maltese program. There were only about 300 visas, 350 that could be issued each year anyway. So this was not like it was a mass market program. So I can't say all these people, even if it's 300 a year, they're all going to go to Portugal and Greece. And even if they do, it's going to be a drop in the bucket for those two remaining countries. But what do we think, how this could happen, affect things going forward? We're afraid, some people are afraid that, Malta was just, the easiest, lowest hanging fruit, the easiest target for the EU. And there has been continued pressure by the European Union on member states to change these golden visa programs or even close them outright. And if you look through, I mean, they are closing a lot. Spain closed earlier this year. Ireland closed their program, I believe, last year. So there's been a trend in that direction. And the last two holdouts are Greece and Portugal. So if you're looking at Europe and the whole concept of a golden visa appeals to you, there's not a whole lot of options left. And I think things are safe for now, but we simply just do not know. We do not know how the EU, what kind of pressure they're going to put on. With the recent elections in Portugal, it looks like there's not going to be any changes to the golden visa program in Portugal in the near term, which is good news. And in Greece, I haven't heard of any kind of political sentiment to try to change or get rid of the program. So at least for the time being, we've got Portugal and Greece, and we will discuss that a little bit more. This is a country by comparison by some of the more popular programs: Portugal, Greece, Italy, and UAE, United Arab Emirates, the largest city of which is Dubai. Now, and this just kind of gives you a nice overview. This is a little deceptive here in that the Portuguese minimum investment, in theory, you can invest as little as 250,000, but that's not really an investment. It's a donation to a cultural institution or an establishment of cultural heritage, and you're giving the money away. So there's no return if you're participating in that cultural program. So it's not really fair to say it's an investment of 250,000. If you're looking at investments, in the true sense of the word, the minimum amount for Portugal is 500,000, and that's the vehicle that 90% of all clients, including ours, are using right now. Investment in certain qualified investment funds. They're basically mutual funds that people can invest in for the duration of their residency until they get citizenship. With Greece, this is true, and technically the ceiling is actually higher than 500,000. My associates, when they're preparing this. So the minimum level is in fact 250,000 in Greece, and you can in fact invest in real estate, but it can only be a certain type of real estate, and we'll get into that in a little bit. With Italy, we put this on here just for comparison's sake. It's not in fact a golden visa, it's an investor visa. So the big difference is you need to have residency there. And if you've been following the second citizenship news lately, Italy has really tightened up the requirements for citizenship through ancestry. You can no longer use your great-grandparents to immigrate to Italy. And so, there might be some changes in Italy as well. And then UAE, United Arab Emirates, very popular among some other nationalities, not so much for Americans, because the biggest pull, I would say, of the United Arab Emirates is the fact down here, no income tax. But if you're a US citizen, you can't get away from Uncle Sam no matter where you're living. So that lack of taxation there has limited value, because you're still gonna have to pay all your US taxes no matter where you live and what jurisdiction you live in. This is a brief summary of kind of, the timing. And we'll talk about this in a little bit. With Portugal, I would say one of its biggest appeals is that you can apply as soon as 5 years for citizenship, whereas with Greece, it's 7 years. The Greek language aspect, the Greek language test on the citizenship exam can be a bit of a challenge. For Portuguese, you only need to know A2 level, which is just above basic conversational. So it's not as much of a challenge there. But let's jump into some of the individual country programs to give you a little better understanding of what's required for each and what are the pros and cons. So let's start with Portugal right now. Portuguese program has been around a while. It's been a huge win for the country overall in terms of the billions of dollars it's attracted, but I guess they've been a victim of their own popularity. And what I mean by that is there is a backlog. The government's not keeping up with all the applications. I suppose some people might say it's good to have a problem like that, but for our clients, not always. Here's the good news, though. So these are the most common ways of applying for the Golden Visa. So again, we're not talking about digital nomad visas, retirement visas, or even business visas. If you want to open a business in Portugal, that's also an option. And there's not that 500,000 euro investment level that's required. But the vast majority of our clients just they're not interested in opening a business in Portugal. So we're going to stick to the ones that are most relevant. And in particular, it's that one here in the number one box right there, 500,000 in an investment fund. But what I wanted to mention is, again, great conditions and terms for individuals trying to stay there, right? You only have to stay in the country 7 days a year. So I would say, gosh, if I had to go to Portugal at least 7 days a year, I'd see that as a benefit, not necessarily as a burden. Your family is eligible, and you can apply for citizenship after 5 years. Now, here's an important thing about family eligibility. Differs from a lot of other European countries, and especially from the US. Your children, your dependent children, are eligible to go with you as long as you can show that they are financially dependent on you and they're unmarried and engaged in full-time studies. So that opens a number of opportunities. So, in the US, for example, once your child turns 21, they can't apply, or they can't go together with their parents' application. They have to file a separate application. In Portugal, they don't look at the age. So if your child is, undergrad, 22, maybe took a little bit longer to finish, that's okay. Graduate school, 23, 24, 25, totally okay. The three critical items to keep in mind, again, are that they're unmarried, they're financially dependent on their parents, and they're engaged in a full-time academic program. And that program could be in the US, doesn't have to be, could be in Europe, even in Portugal, could be language classes even, sometimes that works. But the one thing to keep in mind is the older your child gets, the little more of a strict review they would make of the case. So if your child's 30 years old, still living at home, still going to school, not married, theoretically, he or she would be eligible. That might be pushing it. I think what we've generally seen is maybe up to the age 26, 27. That's generally not a problem. Anything older than that can become a little problematic. So advantages of the Portuguese program. Here they mentioned the NHR 10-year tax exemption. So there is a tax regime in Portugal totally separate from the immigration regime. So you've got the immigration aspect where you're eligible for residency and then citizenship eventually, but that doesn't relate to taxes, right? Once you start living full-time, meaning more than 183 days a year, you become a Portuguese tax resident. That's a different status. And it's maybe not one you really want to get because taxes in Portugal, marginal tax rates are high. They are markedly higher than in the US. So the NHR tax exemption is a separate tax regime through which you can apply. It's valid for 10 years. They recently revamped, I shouldn't say recently, it's been already, I think, a couple of years that they've revamped it. So certain types of income, certain activities are subject to this reduced tax rate, under which you'd pay generally about a 10% tax. It varies though on the type of income. So the tax rates are actually quite advantageous even by comparison with American taxes, but only certain types of income qualify for those reduced rates. So that's something we can certainly put you in touch with a qualified accountant and tax advisor in Portugal. But there is this option here, the 10-year NHR, so that is a good option to take advantage of if you're able to. But again, this is true for all citizenship or all the products we're talking about. There's no need to ever renounce your U.S. citizenship. Once you get residency, and certainly when you get citizenship, you have full mobility throughout the Schengen region and access to the EU. Now, again, real estate's no longer an option in Portugal, and then we talked about the citizenship. Here, before we go over to Greece, one important consideration on the timing, and we need to create a slide here, what's missing in this presentation. What's the timing for all this? So, as I mentioned, the government is not keeping up with all the applications. What are the implications of that for you? Personally, if you're looking at a golden visa and you're not looking to actively, immediately move to Portugal, I don't see this as anything but a benefit for our clients. Why do I say that? Currently, the processing times for golden visa petitions are about 1.5 years, possibly even longer. So that's a long time. But if you're one of those people who is not planning to move to Portugal right now, this is a plan B, just maybe in the future, or if things get unbearable at home, it doesn't really matter that the initial application doesn't get reviewed for 1.5 years, because there was a Supreme Court ruling a few years ago where they stipulated that all this time that you're waiting between the application and the initial approval, that counts towards your citizenship. So the clock, as I mentioned, the 5-year clock, in the past it was different. The 5-year clock to get citizenship started when you got that first approval. So you were sitting there for 1.5 years, 2 years. They finally got your approval on the first residency, and only at that point would they start the 5-year clock. Now, under this new Supreme Court ruling, they've made it exceedingly clear that no, it starts from the time you file. So even though you might be stuck in this administrative bureaucratic Netherland for 1.5, 2 years, that's counting towards your citizenship. I don't see much of a downside. And if anything, there's even a financial upside. Why is that? Because the process consists of temporary residency and then permanent residency and then citizenship. The first temporary residency is granted for 2 years. Then you get another temporary residency for 2 years. Then after that, you get permanent residency and you file for the passport. If they take as much time and maybe longer than what they're anticipating, such that you've got to wait, let's say you've got to wait more than 2 years. That's really pushing it. Generally, that's not the case, but let's say you got to wait more than 2 years. That means then you apply for your initial temporary residency after you've been waiting already 2 years in that line. So you file for the first one. And so you see where I'm going, right? That time frame gets slid over. So you file for the second residency. You don't have to file that third time because by that time you've already been in the queue for 5 years, and so you don't have to pay for the renewal fees, the government fees, the legal fees to get that third renewal. So in the past, you always had to kind of do three: first temporary, second temporary, then the permanent. If they're going to take so long getting that first one, it's quite possible you're only going to have to renew it 2 times as opposed to 3 times. And you can save it depending on how big your family is. I mean, you could easily save 10,000 euros or even more. So there's actually a good side. I try to look at the good side of things. And so that's one good side with the delays in the Portuguese program. Now Greece has a different approach in terms of the Golden Visa program. And for some people, it's more appealing, and maybe for others, not so much. Anyway, in terms of overview, very similar to Portugal. The one difference is there's literally no minimum stay requirement. So you don't even have to stay a week a year like you do in Portugal. With Greece, theoretically, the only time you have to go there is to provide your biometrics, do your fingerprinting. Now, here's the biggest difference in terms of investments. Portugal, generally minimum 500,000 euros. With Greece, it's 250,000. So with Greece, and you can invest in real estate, and that's of appeal to people. Some people just feel more secure investing in real estate. Now, to qualify for the lowest threshold in Greece, you can't invest in any real estate. It has to be real estate that was converted from industrial or commercial purposes, converted into residential. And this actually makes sense. The government is trying to get more residential housing stock. And so basically foreigners are helping to fund or finance conversion of abandoned commercial space into residential property. So if you want to qualify for that cheapest level, that 250,000, it's got to be a conversion product. And we work with a number of developers. These projects are generally, for the most part, in Athens. There's probably like 2 or 3 developers we've worked with for a while. They've been in the market quite some time. They've got the whole process laid out from start to finish, boom, boom, boom. You just go through it. And it's pretty straightforward. You can lease out the real estate if you want. You can live there yourself. Not much of a problem. If you want to, for example, purchase an existing apartment or house, or you're building one, as we've had some clients do, like they want to do it on some of the Greek islands, then there's different thresholds that apply based on the location. The highest threshold, I believe, is 800,000 euros. And that's kind of like, I think in Crete or somebody, we had a client building a villa there. So in that case, you can build or buy whatever you want, but the minimum price is going to be much higher. So if that is of something of interest to you, certainly let us know. The vast majority of our clients, I would say, go for that 250,000 level just because they're primarily doing this for the visa purposes and they just don't want to freeze up more money than they have to. So I would say, by comparison with the Portuguese program, Greece is more accessible in terms of its price tag. As far as conversion over to citizenship, I personally think Portugal is a bit easier. First of all, in Portugal, you can do it after 5 years. In Greece, it's after 7 years. The second thing is with Greece, there is a Greek language requirement. I speak multiple languages and know even more. And boy, let me tell you, when I was in Greece, I had a hard time getting around, just figuring out the language and even finding English speakers. It's much more difficult in Greece finding English speakers than in Portugal. Of course, if you're in major tourist areas, it's less of an issue. But in terms of language proficiency, it's night and day. And if any of you have not been to Portugal, you'll be amazed how well the population broadly speaks English, even outside of major tourist areas. I remember stopping at a gas station in Portugal in the middle of nowhere and thought, okay, here's my chance to practice my broken Portuguese, but nope, cashier spoke really good English. I guess she just didn't want to have to suffer through my Portuguese, and she kind of switched over to English fast enough. So it is incredible how well people speak English in Portugal, whether you're at clinics, gas stations, restaurants, stuff like that. It's just the language, English is taught as a second language very early on. And unless you're dealing with somebody who's maybe quite elderly, maybe over 60, vast majority of people do speak English without many problems. So, again, if you're looking for something that's quick, you don't have to wait that 18 months. It's probably 3 to 6 months, I'd say, in Greece. Something that's quick, less expensive, lower investment threshold, Greece is the way to go. If you're looking for quality of life, standard of living, quality of healthcare, I think in all those parameters, Portugal almost invariably comes out better than Portugal. Portugal always comes out better than Greece. And so if those are some considerations of yours, then you might want to consider the Portuguese program. Italy, just a few words about it. With the Italy program, it's a residence program. It's not a Golden Visa program, so that's a big difference from what we've talked about. So you have to live there, and there's actually, and so you've got to invest a certain amount of money. And here it is, 2 million in Italian government bonds. I'm not sure that's going to be the smartest investment you ever make. $1 million donation, also pretty steep. So the vast majority put 250,000 in a startup. But you might say, hey, what do I know about startups? I'm 55 and in my career in the US. Last thing I want to do is invest $250,000 in a startup in Italy. There is one, and I'm kind of scrolling through this rather quickly. There is one project with some clients, partners of ours, where they've tokenized your investment in a hotel. So it's basically an investment in a hotel property, guaranteeing 3% annual yield. You invest 250,000 euros into it, and then you're able to qualify for the investor visa. So how is this innovative? Well, they tokenize your investment, and they admit it openly that this is a case of what would you say, form following function, that the government says, okay, you've got to use some innovative technology. Okay, our clients are investing in a hotel, but their ownership in that hotel is represented by a token that they've created. They've had approvals and it works. So all that I can say is, hey, if it works, there's no need to fix it. So if you are interested in Italy and you want to take advantage of that 250,000 innovative investment structure, which is the lowest investment amount, please reach out to us and we can put you in touch with our partners that are handling that product, because it is a very innovative structure, how they do it, guaranteed yield. The exit strategy or exit plan is pretty straightforward, upon completion of the refurbishing of the hotel. So that could be something of interest to you. And the other thing that's very appealing about that is you make the investment after you're approved in Italy. So you do all the paperwork first. You do the paperwork, show the investment, business plan, all that stuff. You submit it to the government. When or if the government approves your petition, then you put the money in. So, if cash flow is an issue or you don't want to freeze up money without the certainty of knowing you're going to get approved, Italy might be the way for you to go. So that's as far as Italy goes. Dubai, we put this on here just to, for variety, shake things up a little bit. Do we see a whole lot of Americans going to Dubai for residency or citizenship? Well, citizenship is almost impossible in Dubai if you weren't born there. But for residency, not so much. A lot of Europeans in Dubai, especially Brits, hundreds of thousands of British expats in Dubai and the Emirates in general. It was previously a British colony, so maybe that's not too surprising. And I was in Dubai earlier this spring. And Abu Dhabi, incredible. Anybody who hasn't been there, just to visit it, it is incredible, the scale of the growth. It's like a playground for real estate developers. But we are seeing an increasing amount of U.S. clients there for just financial purposes, investing in real estate, some other startups, IT businesses, just because the Emirates are really promoting themselves as a laissez-faire kind of free market zone for IT, AI type projects. Real estate as well. Real estate's been driving, Dubai's growth for several years. It's probably plateauing out now, but some of the other Emirates are now getting into that space and developing some of their own projects there on the ocean and whatnot. So we've got partners there. It's relatively straightforward to get residency. Obviously, the tax advantages are great, like I said, but if you're an American citizen, you can't escape Uncle Sam unless you renounce your citizenship. But nonetheless, if you've got partnerships, if you've got offshore partners that you're working together with, and for them it's more comfortable working with in an environment or a very low tax or no tax environment such as Dubai. We see a lot of U.S. clients maybe developing their partnerships there, and getting the residency there is quite easy, very fast. The whole government there, whatever emirate you're talking about, but particularly Dubai and Abu Dhabi, they see these. I guess it's hard to call them countries. I mean, they're like large cities, but they run them as a business, and you feel it there that they're into marketing themselves, making things efficient, public services. These cities are extremely clean, relatively efficient in terms of how they operate. And so they see these emirates as being businesses in and of themselves. And so some of the work you have to do, or paperwork, administrative stuff, quite easy by comparison to some other locales. Like I said, getting citizenship in Dubai, unless you got an extra 3 or 4 million, I'd say it's pretty much impossible. But that's fine. I don't think we have a lot of clients looking to do that. Just something here about some of the tax differences in taxation here. You really would need to talk with your accountant to kind of figure out which country would be most appropriate. Real estate returns here, again, not too relevant maybe for this webinar, but could be of interest to some people, and we're certainly willing to go into some more detail later if you've got some interest. So here's kind of just a cheat sheet as to what might work for you, what might be the best option based on your goal. If you look on the left side there, it talks about what do you need, whether it's EU citizenship, you want the lowest threshold for your investment, you want tax-free living, stuff like that. Which of these options might be the best? So again, it's not our job to tell you what is the best. We work with our clients to understand what they need, what they're looking for, and then try to structure something there that would work for them. So with that, I think we will probably wrap up the presentation, at least from my side. And if there's any questions on the floor, certainly happy to entertain any questions. Like I said, if you have a question, put it in the general chat there. More than happy to respond to that. Otherwise, we will follow up. We'll share a copy of this presentation with everybody who registered, including those who were not able to participate, in order that they could also get this information. And looking forward, what do we think? What are our recommendations? If you're looking at Europe, which was the focus of today's discussion, I would not delay much. We can see by the decision in Malta, the EU is not a big fan of golden visas or similar structures that are offering citizenship. I don't see any immediate threat that they're going to close the remaining 2 programs in Portugal and Greece, but you never know. I mean, these are kind of political issues that are hot button issues, and the general trend is one towards restricting second citizenship. So if you're looking at Europe, I would not delay further, not only because of these political considerations, also financial ones too. US dollar is not going to appreciate anymore as much as it did over the last couple of years, and it's gone down over 10% this year alone. And so each decrease in the value of the dollar vis-a-vis the euro is going to generally require more of an investment on your end. Here's one thing in passing that we didn't mention, and definitely want to improve on, and maybe add this to the presentation before we send it out to all of you. One thing we didn't mention is use of 401k funds in Portugal. This has been a very hot topic with our clients lately. You can use self-directed IRA funds for your investment in any of these funds in Portugal. In theory, you're not restricted. You can use any qualifying golden visa fund in Portugal for your self-directed IRA. Now, if you go that route, you've got to do the conventional route, which I'll be honest with you, it's a pain in the butt. It keeps accountants and lawyers employed because it requires creating an LLC. And first of all, you have to move your IRA funds to a self-directed IRA that allows for overseas investments. And there's probably about 10, 15 custodians like that in the US. If you have questions, where to find one of those self-directed IRA companies, let us know and we'll put you in touch. But you have to roll over your money from wherever your IRA funds are now into a self-directed IRA. You have to open an LLC, which is like the manager in the US. You have to open up a similarly named LLC in Portugal. And then you have to use these 2 LLCs to direct the investments through, and then the funds go into the Golden Visa Fund. That's the old way of doing it. And it's a bit of a headache. You've got to register these companies. You have to pay for their renewal and their annual registration. And those fees actually kind of add up in Portugal, even though things in general in Portugal are less expensive, especially with legal fees. But there's at least 2 funds that we're aware of in Portugal, possibly a third, a very large third one, but they're evaluate all the compliance requirements. But there are two funds in Portugal that allow direct IRA investments into their funds. They've set up the needed structures so that you put your money into a self-directed IRA in the US, and you make the wire right from that self-directed IRA directly into the fund. And these funds can even do the conversion, so you don't have to necessarily convert into euros first. They do the conversions. I believe both of them use the WISE platform. So if you're not familiar with it, super great multi-currency platform, WISE, W-I-S-E. I don't think there's anyone better out there. Maybe Revolut, which is out there. So they use WISE, so you're getting a very competitive exchange rate. And you literally just directly wire those funds into there, and you're good to go. So you don't have to create all these LLCs and stuff like that. So if you've got a large egg nest, you've got a large amount of funds in your IRA that you can roll over. It's like killing two birds with one stone. You can put your money to work. The Portuguese market is not nearly as dynamic as the US, but that's a good and bad thing. In these turbulent times in the US where things are kind of like a roller coaster the last few months, Portugal, much more stable, less volatility. And that actually is probably a good thing in these current times, that you can put your money to work there in Portugal and at the same time create a heritage, a legacy for yourself and your family. You can allow yourself to get residency passport for yourself, your children, and the benefits that those accrue are also numerous. So something of interest to anybody looking at Portugal, feel free to reach out to us directly to discuss the option of using 401k, because that's a really appealing option for those that have adequate funds in their 401ks or their IRAs. So if nobody has any questions at this point, on that happy note, which I think is a good one, I'll probably wrap up this session. Like I said, we will share the recording with everyone who both signed up and also participated. And we certainly look forward to you to participating in future webinars, or even better yet, reaching out to us directly to work out a transition plan that will work best for you and your family in achieving your goals and objectives going forward. Thank you, everybody. Pleasure seeing you today.